ekam aksharam hrudi nirantaram bhasate swayam likyate tatam. Hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram yaham atmarupena hृदि विषमनसा swam चिन्वता मुच्यता आत्मनिष्ठो देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तभावशुद्धिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो वदति यः दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मनो सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं. Namo Ramana. We have been meditating on Vivekachoodamani, the original Sanskrit being a work of Shankara Bhagavad Padar, and the translation in prose form is by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. We have been relying on the English translation of this prose work by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi that is available in the collected works of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. We have been introduced by the Acharya to the fact that the Viveka about the self and non-self is critical to come to Atmajnana. The discrimination between what is self and what is non-self. And the Acharya goes ahead and takes up the investigation into the non-self, and we have gone through some portion of the gross body as the non-self. The next segment obviously being subtle body, and the segment after that being the causal body. In gross body, the Bhagavad Padar takes us to the fact that The ego identifies with the gross body, and this is the root cause of all misery. And by the de-identification from this gross body, one attains the state of Vishnu, or the all-permeating one. That in Ramana Stuti Panchakam, there is a reference to the fact that who is Ramana as Supreme Being, he is the one who permeates both the Pindam and the Andam. That is, both the individual body as well as the universal. There is only one spirit. He is that one spirit which simultaneously permeates the whole creation. So, when one de-identifies with the gross body, one identifies with the Supreme Spirit that permeates everything. This question is asked by Gambiram Seshayar to Bhagavan in the original work of Self-Enquiry. That you are asking us to inquire into the identification with the gross body. What will happen to our identification with the subtle and causal bodies? And Ramana replies that it is on the gross body identification that the other two identities have been superimposed. So to get rid of this I am this gross body identity, you necessarily have to get rid of causal and the subtle. Then only you are completely rid of the gross body identity. Therefore, it is sufficient to say that get rid of your identity with the gross body. In what way can you get rid? Only by identifying with the self that is beyond the subtle and causal also. So we have seen up to that, that is verse number 86. We go on from verse number 87 to verse number 92, which concerns still with the gross body. This 86, 87 to 92, they refer to still the aversion required to keep away from the gross body, which is made of skin, flesh, blood, and how the subtle elements, the Panchabhutas, in their subtle form, they do the Panchikarana or Panchikruta, the dividing and reuniting to form the gross elements. The gross elements being the earth, water, air, fire, and the space. All these, the gross elements that we see, are all the remixing of the subtle elements by Panchikrana, and that process. And what is this gross body? This gross body is made of those gross elements. You will find that this gross body is made of all those that we said. It is made of earth, it is made of water, it is made of fire, it is made of the space, and of course the air in between. But Acharya brings us something which science doesn't have an answer to. Science has an answer up to this, that Tom Chi also finds that the body is in a constant state of exchange with the earth. Actually, it is the earth and the other elements. There is 7% of body weight exchange with the earth and water and air. Every day, 7% of the body weight, bodily atoms go away, replaced by earth. In a matter of 2 weeks, he says, 95% of the body is different atoms from what it was 2 weeks ago. But how is it that the same potato eaten by me and the same potato eaten by a 5-year-old or 10-year-old or even same aged person with different body, how it becomes, it is the same potato, it is the same lettuce, but it becomes this body with all its particularities, and in his case, in the other person's case, it becomes that body with all its own particularities. That is where the Acharya says this gross body putting together, the coming together is out of past actions. So the gross body comes together, the atoms of this earth come together in Nandakumar form due to the past actions. And the body becomes a place for enjoyment and suffering. This becomes like a house is for the householder, the body is for the jiva, says the Acharya. Like for the householder, how his house is. It is the place of stay from out of which he goes out and does actions, has experiences. Similarly, the jiva treats the gross body, and it is through the gross body that pleasures like garlands, sandal paste, the other opposite sex, and all these are experienced. This body itself is samsara. That would be very strange to presume like that, but Bhagavan clarifies that in Ulladhu. He says that Jadavudal nan ennadu Satchittu udiyadu Udalalawa nanun rudikkum idayil. The gross body does not say I, and the pure Satchit does not rise or set. But in between these two, there is something that rises, the jiva, who brings in the load of karma, and that is how this identification with the body itself is called as samsara. The identification with the gross body itself is called samsara. Birth, growth, decay, illness, death are the characteristics of the body. Childhood, boyhood, youth are its stages. Castes and other orders of life are ordained to it, and honor and dishonor are addressed to it by the world. So this is the description of the gross body as a non-self in the discrimination between self and non-self. Up to this, the description of the body as a non-self to be let go of identity with is what is described by Acharya. During this week, something interesting happened that since we had summarized the Vivekachoodamani on the previous sessions somewhat, thanks to Dr. Saibish ji, he had sent me one analysis of the senses, of the gross senses in the gross body, a very useful and interesting analysis, which I would like to share for the next 10 minutes or so. I had made the connection between the gross senses and the 5 elements, but not exactly in the way that doctor had. So I would like to share that and how our subsequent exchanges took it to, just to connect it with self-enquiry. For a few minutes, let us dwell on that how the turning inward of the senses, what can be done about this. Right? How he has written it in his journal, he was reading it out, and how best I have understood, I am trying to reproduce it before you, so that we understand how the senses are turned inward. First of all, the connection between the gross senses, that's in the gross body, which is turned outward towards the gross world of objects. The gross senses that through which we get the information about the world are, of course, the nose, the tongue, the skin, the touch, then the eyes and the ears. All connected to the 5 Panchabhutas, you can say predominantly. Now, they are having touch with the other bhutas also, but then predominantly with the one of the Panchabhutas. Like the connection that is there in Vedanta is that the nose, the smelling, is connected with the earth. That is, only when the molecules of some gross particles in the earth goes along with the air into the nostrils, we are able to get the sense of smell. Then the taste is connected with jihva, the tongue or the taste is connected with the water, and the skin, which is touch, is connected with the air that is around us. The eyes are connected with the fire or light. The fire in its subtle form is light, and ears connected with space, which is able to hear the movement of the space as sounds from within. So this is the primary connection, that is nose with earth, that is fragrance with earth, taste with water, touch with the air, seeing with fire or light, and hearing with the space. These are the 5 elements and the 5 senses. And he has made a very good analysis of this, because he had taken a particular experience where there was lot of challenge to these senses, lot of noise, lot of other challenges to the various senses, and from there he has made note of this, that the nostrils, the smelling, can it remain with the pure earth and not go with the variations in the earth, like the, suppose we get an agarbatti smell, that is some particles of that agarbatti fire being mixed with the air coming to your nostrils. You say, this is the thing that I would like to have while meditating. Now doctor is asking, can we put away that only the blandness of the smell, that is the help of turning inward. The smelling can try to smell water, which is a higher element, so to say, can try to smell air, can try to smell fire or light, can try to smell the space. In all situations, it would come to blandness. And the taste, can it remain with tasting pure water, not the variations provided by other elements mixed into the water, bringing in 6 different types of tastes. That how Bhagavan used to do, that mixing all the foods, all the different, somebody would have prepared 40 different items and brought, and to her consternation, Bhagavan would mix all that and say that I have only one taste. So that is how the turning inward of taste is suggested by doctor. And mind you, this is a new investigation for me in that particular area, because in Atmavicharam we just let go of that whole area. But we are now in Vivekachoodamani, where we are looking at how the Acharya wants us to turn inward from the senses also. So what about the touch? The touch, can it remain with not going with the variations of touch, especially in the sensitive places of touch that are more sensitive than the rest of the skin? And can it remain with touching the air only? Similarly, with the eyes, the fact is that can it remain with what Akka would suggest, that we are always looking at the objects but never at the light that reveals the objects. So what Dr. G is also suggesting here, Sai Vishnu, is that can we look at the light rather than the differences projected by the objects, not even the differences in colors. That those variations are the ones which make us attached, which make us go out and we liking some colors or some kind of objects is what, and you can always catch your eyes going like that, that it is going towards something which it likes, that which the like is much more deeper. But then you can catch it going after objects rather than the light that is present. And of course, hearing, he says that his suggestion is that can we hear the Omkara or the silence, the depth of the silence. And more or less, this was the brief presentation. He must have definitely had some more in his write-up in his journal. But then this was the most relevant thing for us in our discussion about Vivekachoodamani, and he had presented it to us that can we do it like this? And then we took up the inquiry to a little bit further that when the smelling, it tries to smell the water, then it has to elevate itself to taste. That is, it cannot, isn't it? It fails to smell the water, so it elevates itself to taste. Our inquiry we were just taking. So the whole sense of smell is now contained in the taste itself, because the smell cannot come and smell this. And the taste, when it tries to taste air, it has to elevate itself into touch. So all the tastes that you have differentiated and try to go out, once they want to taste the air, it has to come to touch. And when touch wants to touch fire or light, when the sense of touch wants to touch the higher element of fire or light, obviously it has to elevate itself into seeing, because seeing fire does not, the sense of seeing, you can see from a distance and you don't need to touch the fire. So to see fire or to see light, the sense of touch has to now elevate itself to the fine skin, which allows the gross light, the sunlight, to permeate and send in objects and all that. And when the seeing wants to elevate itself to see space, it has to elevate itself to hearing. That this was one sub-inquiry we had generated, that in hearing, he had given sub-inquiries that how the seeing is supporting to the other senses like touch. When you are driving a car initially, when you are learning car driving, you will find that the eyes would like to see the gear, then only the hand will go. That's why we have a wonderful instructor here. He will say to the new student, he will say, create the whole inner dimensions of the car in your mind first. Steering wheel, the gears. Of course, I am talking of the old gear, stick shift and all that. So that you have three, the accelerator, brake and clutch. And you put it in the mind's eye so that you don't have to look away from the windscreen or the screen that shows you the where you are going while shifting the gear or shifting the leg for second pedal or third pedal. So you find that the driving through the eyes, it shows that the eyes are required for some of the actions where those other actions of touch are not habituated. If you are habituated with that, then you don't need the eye support. Otherwise, you need the eye support for the other actions. Now, similarly, the sounds, he suggests, can evoke images, can evoke taste and smell and other things. Of course, on deeper inquiry, we find that it may require the support of the mind in between, but still go with the inquiry so that we go to vichara. Now comes a small addition that we did, that when the hearing tries to hear an emotion, that we are angry or that we are now irritated, somebody is honking and you are irritated. Can you hear irritation? So when the sense of hearing wants to feel an irritation, it has to become either what you call as the base love or the feeling, whatever you call it. The underlying feeling is required to feel an emotion. So that is, you shift the gears, that is, you have to turn inward. We are now moving to vichara slightly ahead of or slightly a different pace from Vivekachoodamani, so that we stay in touch with the sadhana. So when the hearing wants to hear an emotion, then it has to become feeling. When feeling wants to see a thought, feel a thought, when it wants to feel a thought, it has to become thinking. And when thinking wants to think of the I thought, it has to be still. So that was the inquiry we both made during this week. Doctor had initiated it, and thanks to him, I just felt like sharing that before we go to the subtle body. The subtle body is the next non-self that is covered in verses 92 to 109 of the original work in Sanskrit. What is this subtle body? A subtle body, you get an idea about it that when you see Dr. Ramachandran's experiments with the what he calls as the ghost limbs or the amputated limbs, how they still have a feeling of the hand being there. In those situations, what he finds is that when they're feeling that the hand is still there, has not gone. So in Vedanta, you will say that the subtle body is still there. The gross body has been amputated, but the subtle body is still going to that shape. It is still having that shape. And there is a pain in the subtle body, but the brain, which is part of the gross body, is not able to send signals to unclench. So Professor Ramachandran says there is pain which they don't know how to address. That there is a pain that the limb has been amputated, and the person still feels the hand is there and is fixed, is clenched, and the nails are pressing into his fist, and there is a lot of pain, and he is not able to unclench because it is still the subtle body is there, but the gross brain is not able to send signal to that. What he does is that he somehow arranges so that the other hand is placed in front of a mirror, or somebody else's hand is placed in front of a mirror, and the person is made to feel that he is seeing his hand. He is seeing his hand, that the de-identification from the gross body identification is removed by the subtle body connecting with it. And then when he gives the unclenching signal in the subtle body acts, and in a few days the subtle body identity with the ghost limb, it vanishes. It goes in almost all the cases. But when it is there, when the problem is there, the gross body, which acts through the skin, is not able to send the command. When he is able to trick the subtle body, into think that his hand is still there, then somehow the command is passed to that spirit, and it is able to unclench and free itself from the pain. Now that means, why did I go into this experiment or this explanation of Professor Ramachandran? Is that the subtle body is very much present in the waking state within us. That immediately within, but our identification with the gross body is so strong that we are not able to experience the subtle body unless turning inward is made. Unless one understands why Bhagavan is asking us to turn inward and observe thoughts, observe emotions. For whom is this? When you do that, what happens? Let's see as we go ahead. But what is this subtle body made of that is present within and that is experienced only in the dream state where the identity with the gross body is not there? You experience the subtle body in the dream state. The subtle body is also made of all these karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, and all that. So that definition is going to appear before us in verses 92 to 109. Let's go through that as to how this subtle body is also the non-self, but a description is given by the Acharya. The ears, the skin, eyes, nose, and tongue, which we were seeing, are organs of knowledge because they enable us to cognize objects. So in the subtle body also there are these jnanendriyas. The vocal organs, hands, feet, etc. they are the organs of action, karmendriyas, because they perform their respective modes of action. These are also present in the subtle body. The internal organ, the mind, within that structure of subtle body, there is the mind. So when we are able to access when Bhagavan says the world is present in the mind, and can you see that the waking state is nothing but a dream? He is making us access the subtle body here itself without waiting for the dream to come. But then let's go into it as it develops. But right now, what does Acharya say is the subtle body? It too has the ear, nose, and the jnanendriyas, the hands, feet, and the other karmendriyas, organs of action. Then that subtle body has a mind. The mind has 4 elements, which is the mind, the intellect, ego, and chitta. The 4 elements in the inner organ. In that subtle body, there is an inner organ, which is the mind, which has these 4 elements. The mind there too has the aspects of desire and aversion, like and dislike. The emotional content in Vedanta, what is mind? Mind is data plus emotional content. So many inquirers into the general modes of meditation may feel that Vedanta is not adequately covering the emotions. But whenever they say mind, they are dealing with emotions. So the mind is the inner instrument connected with like and or desire and aversion. The intellect is determining the truth of the things. The ego, it has only one function. It goes and directly identifies with whatever it has to experience through. It says, I am the eyes, I see. I am the ears, I hear. I am the hands, I move and act. So that is the ego. And chitta is the placid consciousness, but which has all the elements of desire in it. It is not completely placid. It is having the contents of desire in it. These 4 constitute the mind or the inner faculty. That is the mind with its desire and aversion, intellect which determines the truth of things, the ego which is doing the function of identifying, and the chitta which is the basic act of desiring something. Now we have just as gold and silver are shaped into different forms, so the single life breath, prana, in the inner organ also there is the prana. The one prana itself is dividing as prana, vyana, apana, udana, vyana, samana. So those 5 pranas are all just modifications of the single prana, like the gold dividing itself into various ornaments. Now the Acharya, having described what are the jnanendriyas, what are the karmendriyas present, what is the inner instrument present as the mind, and what is the panchapranas present, he now goes into the job of aggregating what all constitute the subtle body. The subtle body is constituted of 8 elements, he says. The 8 elements are, one is the panchabhutas. Panchabhutas are required in their subtle form before panchikarana. When they divide and rejoin, which each of those elements having components of the other elements, before that happens, those elements are required to make the subtle body. So the panchabhutas, the karmendriyas, the jnanendriyas, the inner instrument of mind, the panchaprana which we saw, all these 5, plus the avidya or the ignorance, the desire arising out of avidya, and the actions arising out of desire. All these 8 are the components of the subtle body, which is present where? It's present right now, but unless you consciously want to experience it, you won't be experiencing it. You will be so involved. If I am so involved in the act of speaking, then I won't be. Whereas, and if you are so involved in the act that it is all gross, but when you add an element of can I listen without commenting, then you add the element of the inner intellect onto the act of listening. So from a very gross act, you start being aware of, am I commenting to what is being listened to? So you start making the subtle body has awakened for enquiry. Still the non-self, but it's available for enquiry if you turn inward. So what are the 8 elements, 8 constituents with which the subtle body is made? The Panchabhutas, the basic element, in their subtle form before the Panchakarana. The 5 Karmendriyas, the 5 Jnanendriyas, the Panchapranas, and the inner instrument of the intellect, mind, ego, and the chitta. Those are the 5, plus 3 more, avidya or ignorance, the desire arising out of not knowing who you are, and the actions arising out of desire. These 3 added to those 5 form the Sukshma Sharira, the 8 constituents. Now, this Sukshma Sharira is normally accessed only in dream. It is experienced, it is not experienced in the waking state, it is experienced only in the dream. Because in Vedanta, waking state means identification with the gross body. And dream means only where the mind is acting by itself. By itself means the mind itself is the actor, the mind itself is the experiencer. In the dream, the pure dream of the jiva, we clearly understand that the mind of the jiva itself is the actor, the mind of the jiva itself is the experiencer. In fact, it is everything that is there in the dream, but then more of that later. But this dream experience, what happens to the self of all in the dream experience? What happens to the Satchit, the existence consciousness? It is what provides the light of consciousness to the mind, for the mind to act. What provides? The light of consciousness provides the consciousness. But then how does the mind act? It is acting out of all the subtle impressions created by it according to the flow of theory from the waking state. From the waking state, whatever impressions have been created, that is what leads to the dream state of the jiva. But then in enquiry, we are going to, while opening up the dream state, even here, the subtle body, even here in the waking state for enquiry, certain things become clearer as we open up and start observing thoughts. That where is the gross body, where is the subtle body, the relationship becomes a bit clear. But let's look at it after we see the causal body. So when we say that there is bad eyesight or our thirst is not being attended to, then it is all the problems of those, the karmendriyas, like the eye not being proper, or the food not being provided for the prana. It is not a variation in the self. The self is unchanging. It provides by its self-luminosity, it provides light to the mind. The mind is the actor and the experiencer. What is the root cause of action and experiencing or the subtle karmas? It is because of the previous vasanas or the impressions that drive the mind. Therefore, we see that the inner organ, the subtle body, is a place where all these experiencing, all these works are taking place. So when the gross body we say we are angry, it is not in the gross body it is taking place. It is in the subtle body. But we may not realize, because of our identity with the gross body, we will superimpose a subtle body's action onto the gross body. We will say, looking at the gross body of another person, we'll say is a good person. But the good or the bad is not present in the gross body. It is a division present in the intellect. But we will casually mention that that person is a good dharmic person, referring to that body. That's why we say that when the gross body dies, it is said in some branches of religion that the subtle body continues with whatever it has had as impressions. Suppose it has had, if you ask Patinata, he will say that the gross body is meaningless. Only the karmas you have done, the good and the bad karmas you have done, the tapas you have done, that will be carried forward. The impressions of the karmas and the impressions of the tapasya that you have done, that will be carried forward by the subtle body, he will say. But then in Bhagavan's investigation, the gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body, all the three are non-self. And the ego is the one which identifies with the gross body, experiences the waking state. When it is occupied by tamo guna, then when it is occupied by rajo guna, it becomes the subtle body. And in Bhagavan, when it is in tamo guna, it experiences the, or sattva guna, it experiences the deep sleep. How sattva guna and how in tradition they say that sleep is characterized by tamo guna, we will see. We will see. The body is in tamo guna. But if the subtle body can experience sleep, can experience quietude, then the subtle body has to be sattva, has to be having the sattva guna. Anyway, that we will see that as we go into self-enquiry, which opens up experiencing the subtle body, experiencing the causal body, not directly, but on investigation, the causal body starts unwinding and starts becoming thoughts which you can experience and let go. But do any of the activities of the subtle body affect the self? No. Any of the activities of the subtle body which push on the gross body, they don't affect the self. The happiness or sorrow in the world objects is because the ego likes or dislikes that object. There is no happiness in the object itself. I have shared that experience many times, that one of the first experiments I could do with the inner journey was that there is no real happiness in the cricket game. That it was my like and dislike, my ego's like and dislike, that was making me feel as though the cricket game was providing happiness to me. That there was really no happiness in the cricket game by itself. Because if you see the US people, nowadays they also start playing cricket. But some 20-30 years back, if you see some US people doing interview about cricket, they will know nothing about it. And when they say the India played like this, scored this many runs, it won't make any movement in their mind, because there is no like or dislike that they have developed as impressions towards that game. Whereas in my case, I would jump with joy when Sachin Tendulkar or other people play well, and really be depressed when some other team starts winning. But then one day in 2003, I was alerted to this fact that there is really no happiness in that game. It is only your ego liking something and disliking something that is making you feel that there is happiness there. I came home that day. That was the match between India and Pakistan in South Africa World Cup 2003 March, I think. And Saeed Anwar was scoring century. But then that day it had been pointed out that the happiness apparently coming from there is because I have superimposed my like and dislike. When I can observe it without like and dislike, see what happens, was the suggestion. So though my eyes were in the cricket match, my attention was on my ego, whether it was generating like and dislike. Now, no wonder that there was no generation of happiness or sorrow. There was no feeling of sorrow that Saeed Anwar scored a century that day. Now, even now we can think of that. But then when you think of it, the ego does not have like or dislike, then we clearly understand the thought of that cricket match does not have the happiness. Any thought, any sensory object does not have happiness of its own. The happiness is the nature of the self alone. The ego, by its like and dislike, superimposes happiness on an object. By that very act, it creates misery. First of all, it identifies with the body, and then it superimposes. That means it's a great sense of like, the great desire to have a form. That is the root of all misery, the root of the misery of relative happiness and sorrow. In the self, Acharya says in his verse that in the self there is no sorrow, there is no non-happiness, there is only Ananda. It is Ananda Swarupa. But the moment the ego rises and identifies with a subtle body or a gross body, and then superimposes its likes and dislikes on the sensory objects or objects of thought or emotion, then it feels that it is getting happiness from that object. But really, that object does not have the ability to give happiness. It is the so all happiness and sorrow, the pleasure and pain are creations of the ego out of identification and through their like and dislike. And that is not the nature of the self, says Acharya. This is borne out by the authority of the Upanishads and by direct perception, tradition, and inference that the objects of the world, the emotions, the thoughts, by themselves, they do not have any ability to give happiness. Is the Upanishadic teaching and the teaching of Vivekachoodamani that the ego, the instrument of identification, through its like and dislike, through the activity of the mind which has like and dislike, feels that object is giving happiness, whereas really that very identification and imposing of like and dislike is the origin of misery. According to Bhagavan, what is the root cause of samsara, root cause of misery? Bhagavan, in the subtle body itself, says the subtle body is basically made of thoughts, just like the gross body too is at the core made of thoughts. But all the other thoughts arise after the rising of the I thought. So while analyzing the inner instrument of mind, the Acharya and Vedanta analyze it as the mind, the intellect, the ego, and the chitta. Bhagavan looks at it as a collection of thoughts. All the other thoughts arise after the rising of the I thought. So in Bhagavan, the problem definition is simple and very deep, in the sense that Bhagavan doesn't identify the root cause of misery to the worldly objects, to the gross body, to the subtle body also, but only to that which rises as I within us. He says that Jadudal nanennadu Sachittu udiyadu Udalalawa nanun rudikku. To the size of the gross and subtle body, there arises an I from within us. This is the Chit Jadagranthi. Bhagavan doesn't want us to turn step by step from the sense of smell, turn inward, turn inward, turn inward. If you can work on this root problem, then automatically the desires towards the non-self, they all are uprooted. What is the root problem? The root problem is not even the Panchakoshas, is not even the Panchendriyas, not even the world of objects, but to Bhagavan, the root problem is the rising of the I principle. Nanudiyad ulla nilai, namaduvaai ulla nilai, says Bhagavan. That Bhagavan doesn't even focus on neti neti. The neti neti should be automatic. The neti neti of the non-self, which Acharya has defined for us as the gross non-self and the subtle non-self. He is going to go ahead and say what is the causal non-self. But how is Bhagavan's teaching so direct and taking us to the root of the problem? The search for the rise of the fall, say, itself leads to dropping of the non-self. Now, how can you approach the source of the I without letting go of the thought? You cannot. So, Bhagavan does, it's like an afterthought that let go of the thought, but the primary thing is see from where the I arises. See how the focus to the root of the problem, it makes us focused on the one problem inside and one solution inside, not many problems turning inward step by step, step by step. Sometimes the ego and pride may take, now I am having very good diet. I am having an excellent control over my smell and taste. I am not looking out to various hotels. See those fellows, the others, they are all going out. That means the ego may take credit to one of the controls. But in Bhagavan, the identification of the root problem. First of all, the Upadesham means the Guru brings the problem also close, the solution also close to us. What does Bhagavan Shri Ramana Maharshi do? Says that the problem is the rising of the ego principle, which was defined here in the subtle body. Ego is one of the components, they say. But to Bhagavan, that is the root of all problems. To see from where the ego arises, naturally you will have to let go of thought and the other non-self, that is incidental. And when that is taken to the source, Bhagavan says what the Acharya says of letting go of the identity with the body will make you identify with the Vishnu, with that which permeates everything. This subsidence of this ego in enquiry takes one to the source of the mind, source of the gross body, source of the gross world, which is the I, the Spurana. So the advantage of self-enquiry is that we understand how it is essential to turn inward the senses, to turn inwards from the components in the subtle body also, which we will see in due course, and directly look at the source of the I, which automatically means you free yourself from the non-self. Till the ego principle and all that it has as its mind are totally submerged or demolished into the self of all, into the I, the Spurana, the Vishnu, the one permeating everything in whatever way you call, that is it. So we have seen up to the gross body treatment by the Acharya, 109, verse number 109. Let's go through the causal body verses in the next satsang. Let us sit in Atma Vicharam for the rest of the time till 8 o'clock. Then we can listen to Dr. Sharma. Ujjwalji, you can set the time for us. Thank you.
Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings, by the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana. We have been delving into the verses of Vivekachoodamani, that which gives us great Viveka. And in the last class and in this session, this satsang, Nandakumar has taken us into the detailing of what constitutes the gross body and what constitutes the subtle body, as defined and explained by Bhagavat Pada, Shankara Bhagavat Pada, and by Bhagavan in his translation of this work into Tamil. And he has also highlighted for us the ease with which we can, if we have the ekagrata, we can cross over all this in one single go, because Bhagavan puts it all together. He combines everything into the mind at first by saying everything is in the mind. The whole world is in the mind. So the gross body is also in the mind. The subtle body is also in the mind. And when we will look at the causal body, we may say that may also exist only in the mind, because Bhagavan says to us, Manomayam tad bhuvanam vadamaha. This whole world, the entire universe, everything that is seen, which is at the gross level, which is the elements and etc., the Panchabhutas and the Panchikarana, everything, anything that may exist, may be seen to exist, may be experienced as existing, is the Jagat, which is Manomayam, says Bhagavan. So, here, when we look at it, when we look at the list which is made by Adi Shankara Bhagavat Pada in Vivekachoodamani for us, there are a few thoughts which may come to us that, oh, this is the magnitude of what it is. Imagine that the body is made of the 5 elements which after their Panchikarana, it is made of so many things. And when we look at that list, we understand that neither do we have any control over any of those things, nor do we seem to experience ourselves as any of those things. So it becomes intellectually clear to us that this so-called identification with the gross body is not on account of the gross body itself, but on account of what Bhagavan says, that Chit Jada Granthi, that which is linking the body with the self or the I thought, that Granthi. That alone is creating the feeling that I am all this, because even at the thought level, even at the level of the subtle body, sometimes Dilip asks, he would say, can any one of us predict what is going to be our next thought? And when we do not know what is going to be our next thought, how can we even say that we are controlling that or we are that? So, when we look at this listing, it also makes it clear to us, hey, that doesn't seem to be what I feel myself to be. That doesn't seem to be what I am, including the the demarcation between right and wrong. How can I be the demarcation between right and wrong? Because then sometimes I will be right, sometimes I will be wrong. And what is the entity that is doing this division, making this division and superimposing everything on this division? So when we see the variety, when we see the multiplicity, there are two things that could happen. One is we recognize, hey, all these multiple things, I cannot be multiple things. Neither can I be a combination of multiple things. So how can I be all this? The other is that when we see this multiplicity and the number of things that can take hold of us, the number of things that could distract us, if we follow that, if we just look at what all we are identified with, it is also a bit scary. It gives us a sense of fear. My God, I can get caught anywhere in any of this. And when that fear comes, then Bhagavan's answer becomes all the more dear and all the sweeter for the fact that it says, don't worry about the multiplicity of the identifications that are happening. Just get back to that, to the source of that single thought. So that is another thing which happens when one listens to all this, and it is, my God, it is one way amazing, it is one way confusing, it is one way something I cannot even catch hold of, I cannot control. There are so many elements there. So all that Bhagavan has aggregated into one, which he calls the mind, and further by saying that even that mind, only the I thought, vrittayo mano vritti, aham manaha, only the I thought is the mind. So you have to tackle only the I thought. That way, Bhagavan gives us relief. At the same time, the responsibility that lies with one to whom Bhagavan has revealed this path also becomes much higher. Because earlier in Vivekachoodamani, we were told that if we have Manushyatvam, Mumukshutvam, and Mahapurusha Samshraya, if we have all these and yet are not abiding in the self, it is equivalent to committing suicide. It is Atmahan. If that is the case, then having all that and then also having, by Bhagavan's grace, the path, the light of the path that has put everything together. As Muruganatha Swami says, Vedagama Jnana Vinay. He just has churned the Vedas, Agamas, and taken out the essence, the butter, and is feeding it to us. So very simply, then it is important, all the more our responsibility, to hold to the path of self-enquiry to the best of our ability, to keep holding on to it and to allow it to do its task. That is what comes to us. What a great blessing. And then the greater the blessing, the more important it becomes for us to utilize that blessing. Of course, sometimes, why sometimes? Often we may feel that we have failed. So, what does Muruganar Swami say? It is only, what can we do? We can only become aware. We can inquire into that thought also. If I have failed, then we inquire and we hold on to the power of grace as well and say, Ramana, you have brought me to this path of self inquiry. You yourself are the path of self inquiry. You are the goal. You are the revelation. You are the path. You are the strength on the path. And you must fill me with the strength to hold on to you. You must fill me with the strength to hold on to the inquiry, to be vigilant. When the thought rises, to be vigilant, not allow it to take us to stage 2, 3, 400, but get back, hold on, even as thought rises. Of course, Ramana will fulfill his promise, but he also says we need to hold on. He doesn't compromise on that, you see. That's why he allows us this satsang. That's why he allows us the practice. He says the practice must be done. The, the inquiry must be done. Kitty must remember Bhagavan. Then Bhagavan will remember Kitty. Devaraj Mudaliar says, Bhagavan, you must hold me like the cat guru. Bhagavan says, I am holding you like the cat guru, but you must hold me like the monkey child. So, the fact that this revelation is coming to us, the fact that this reiteration is coming to us, is the great support of Bhagavan to hold on, to hold on to the self-inquiry, which is grace and which establishes us in grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri.
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana to all.